Hey everyone, Crystal Dreisbach again. I'm honored and very excited to be moderating this panel. It's the panel you've all been waiting for. We're going to talk secret sauce. We have 4 illustrious panelists who will give us all the answers to our biggest question: what is the secret sauce to getting reuse to be widespread? So once I introduce the panelists, we're going to start the conversation by asking each of them to answer the secret sauce question from their perspective and their expertise. And we'll also take an audience question or two. So now, we've got an interactive plan for the audience questions. I want to direct your attention to the QR code that's going to appear on the screen. We need you to scan it if you'd like to participate. And it's going to take you to 5 questions that we've pre-prepared. You, the audience, have a chance to vote for which question you most want to hear about, and you'll get to see the question leaderboard up on the screen. So with that, let's get started. So first up, down in the end, we have Caroline Vanderlip. Caroline is the founder and CEO of reDish, which offers a foodware washing service with the aim to make reuse an accessible and impactful part of daily routines. And next to her, we have Elizabeth Balkan. Elizabeth brings extensive public policy and strategy experience to her role as director of reLoop North America, which works to advance an array of policy measures to increase packaging circularity. We're amazed and lucky to also have Jennie Romer with us. Jennie is the Deputy Assistant Administrator of Pollution Prevention at the EPA, where she oversees the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention's P2 program, the Environmentally Preferable Purchasing and Safer Choice programs, the P2 grants, and the Green Chemistry Awards. Jennie's work has led to the implementation of over $400 million in historic funding for P2 provided by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. And last but not least, we welcome Nicole Cerroni, who is the Vice President of Sustainability for L'Oreal North America. Nicole is responsible for strategic planning and governance for sustainability across functions and all the business divisions for L'Oreal North America, and she leads L'Oreal's North America social impact program as well. Welcome to the panelists. So, let's get started. Caroline, can you answer the question for us? What is the secret sauce for scaling circular systems?
Well, if I could answer that question, we wouldn't have this conference, would we? So, thank you for that question. I've been thinking about it since you sent it over to me. Most of the people who know reDish and know me would expect me to answer infrastructure, because that's what reDish has built. But I'm not. I'm going to say that the secret sauce is data, and very, very important that everything that's built is built on that data. So I come at it from the perspective of every reusable asset sits on a balance sheet. And it's important to track it, and for many, many reasons. We need to make sure that reusables are not flooding the world with reusable product that could have been single use, and that it is actually being reused at the level that people expect it to be or hope it to be. We need data to make sure that we can support our inventory needs for reuse, which are very different from single use. So data provides inventory and performance management. It provides environmental stewardship, and financial guidance, financial performance. And so I'm going to just say that data in general is really critical. We don't know what the future of reuse looks like, but we do know that without data, we can't learn, we can't course correct, and as necessary, we can't scale. So that would be my answer.
Really great. And I have to say that Caroline's company, reDish, she just earlier showed me an example of the data measurement that she's talking about, and it's something that I think you just have to see in action, and I hope that all of you will get to see a presentation of some kind of video of how it really works, because you think of data and measurement, but what she's talking about is something truly a model. Things which are made to be used again and again and again, that is so very different from a throwaway culture. It is like a shared economy. It's a library of things, and those have to be tracked. And when they're tracked, the insights are endless. What she showed me on her app was that it can immediately show you how many times that particular cup, for example, has been used, where all of the cups are in their ecosystem, how much carbon offsets and waste has been diverted. And this is the kind of technology that can feed in real time in all different kinds of ways. Imagine a city that has waste reduction goals or carbon emissions goals. This information can, if this is part of their city, this can contribute to that city's goals. So the technology is part of the infrastructure of a reuse system. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say one other thing while you're on that? So the bit of technology that Crystal is referring to is the ability literally to scan a unique QR code on every reusable product and to see how many times it's been washed and how it's contributed. We really did it because it's a mechanism to show our users why it's important for them to put that cup or that plate or that whatever package it is in the right bin so that it can be collected, washed, sanitized, and put back into the market. We have found that, one of the biggest issues, obviously, at the user side is, why should we do this? Why, I'm just an individual, and climate change is so big, I can't impact personally climate change. And this little piece of technology, but most importantly, the data behind it, is a way to reinforce that every individual can make a difference. And that's where I think it's been most effective.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, so data and measurement and showing the impacts. Elizabeth, we are dying to know, what is, from your expertise and your perspective, what is the secret sauce to getting this thing to scale?
Well, Crystal, I'm wondering, do you want the nerdy technical answer or the inspirational insight?
Start with inspirational, move into the nerdy.
Okay. That's good, because I would go nerdy first, and then everyone would walk out. So starting at the inspirational level, I know it's corny, but I'll bring to everyone's attention a Chinese proverb which says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. What does that mean? To me, it means a couple things. For one, I think it's important everyone know we are not at the head of the pack, right? There are other regions worldwide that are working really hard on reuse, committing private sector funds, public sector funds. This is a matter of competitive survival. So we have no time to waste. And the other thing I like about this proverb is it brings to mind this idea of preparedness and fear for finding the right time. And the reality is there is no better time than the present, right? We can't go back and maybe maintain the reuse culture that we once had. So we have to act now. So that's kind of my call to action for everyone is, let's plant the seed, because we know 20 years from now, we'll absolutely have no regret for taking action when we should have. And then in terms of kind of the technical design, I mean, we at reLoop are systems level thinkers, and we're thinking about kind of all the components. So Caroline is absolutely speaking my love language when she talks about data. Infrastructure and pooling are really key components. High return rates, which come from being able to track and monitor the flow of material, also really crucial. And standardized packaging, which we know is sometimes the gorilla in the room, but it is one of the core ingredients to the secret sauce. And then bringing all of that together like, you know, a good grandma in the kitchen would, we need collaboration, right? So multiple stakeholders working together, and that is easier said than done, but the simple truth of reuse systems, which are radical and transformative, is we're gonna have to break through those silos and really work together and collaborate in a pre-competitive, non-competitive way.
Beautifully said, Elizabeth. Now, from the exciting height of the federal government, what is the ingredient that can be added to this sauce from your perspective?
So I will say I have a couple of the ingredients that go into that secret sauce. So I would say money and momentum. So with the Biden-Harris administration, first is the momentum part. You know, we've seen quite a few executive actions, and one thing is just the creation of my position. I'm the first deputy assistant administrator for pollution prevention at EPA. Pollution prevention is also synonymous with source reduction. And so having someone at the table in the administration to raise my hand and say, what about reuse? What about refill? In a lot of these conversations. And then as far as money goes, you mentioned earlier the historic bipartisan infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act, that has brought in so many more opportunities, including in the pollution prevention space. It was supercharged with an extra $100 million over 5 years, and we've seen that some of those grants, one of them in particular, is really focused on reuse. So in Hilo, Hawaii, creating a community-wide foodware reuse system, and then we have other foodware grants that could potentially touch on reuse as well. I'm just trying to figure out how can we really harness that money and take full advantage by connecting our grantees and others to each other and to really everyone else who's already working on this. So I have another webinar coming up in July 10th, so everyone stay tuned for that. And then I will also say, the other missing ingredient, I think, is really getting stakeholders together. I've been talking with my colleagues at White House Council on Environmental Quality on how can they use the White House powers of convening to really bring together stakeholders in a way that hasn't happened already, to have these conversations about standards, about what else is missing to really get to reuse. I think in the opening panel today, Drexler was saying that she wanted to be able to walk into a big box store and see reuse happening on a large scale and have that be something that everyone can have access to. And I think that really struck me. So shout out to that earlier panel.
Thank you for helping from a federal level to hitch that money to the momentum. It's really amazing. And it sounds like another ingredient that you mentioned is really convening and having facilitated consensus building. So much more convening and collaboration needs to be done.
And I can't guarantee that, but I said I would bring back some knowledge that I gain at this conference. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, we'll be rooting for you. Okay, so last but not least, Nicole from L'Oreal. What, from a corporate standpoint, do you feel is part of the secret sauce to getting this into consumer packaged goods, to making this a reality?
Thank you so much for having me. And I think my build on what each of my illustrious panelists have said is I can bring the consumer side of things. So I think from my perspective, what it takes to unlock reuse is consumer centricity and making reuse compelling for the everyday consumer. At L'Oreal, we have our reuse journey has really started with our refillable fragrances, which are luxury products mostly. And while we've seen a great penetration of those products within our portfolio, today 30% of our fragrance offerings globally are in refillable formats, we're not going to fully unlock reuse until we're able to bring it to the everyday consumer in the big box stores and make it compelling for them to purchase reusable and refillable formats. And so for us, the key to that is unlocking some of the elements that really drive our consumers to buy, and thinking about cost and affordability and convenience are two of those special ingredients that will compel consumers. So as we at L'Oreal start to move into offering refillable formats outside of fragrance, but in some of our products like skincare and hair care, we think about how do we offer those at a discount to the consumer, and also how do we make the case that there's a convenience factor. So if our refillable pouches offer 3 times the refills, that's 3 times you don't have to go to the store. And so for us, it's really about partnering with our retail customers to figure out how to bring refills to our everyday consumers, make them identifiable and discoverable and compelling outside of just the sustainability case for them.
And what have you seen as some of the success in these conversations with retailers? Has it really been challenging? It sounds like the way to get reuse to everyday customers is cost and convenience and appealing to the everyday customer.
I think that increasingly as companies, including our retail customers, start to think about their own sustainability goals and their Scope 3 footprints, increasingly there is alignment between where we believe we need to go on refillable formats and our retail customers' footprint. And so I think there's a shared interest in moving to more sustainable packaging formats. I also think there are opportunities where refills can also enhance brand loyalty and enhance consumer commitment and stickiness, especially if we're able to think about things like subscription models for refills.
This is great. And thank you all for adding your ingredients to the secret sauce. I want to add just a couple of mine, too, that I didn't hear. Back to corporations and their role, the role of the private sector. I think it is so important to point out that, the products that we buy are the products that are sold to us. And they come in that packaging, and the packaging is the vessel for the product we want. So we didn't ask for the disposable. The corporations supplied it. So do we really need to wait for demand, or can corporations be the supply? And I'm not necessarily talking to L'Oreal because you guys are really exploring this, but I hope that, and maybe this is a good question for you, what are some of the ways in which you can teach other CPG companies to get on the bandwagon?
From our perspective, when it comes to reuse, we know that we have a role to play in leading consumer behavior. As L'Oreal, we're one of the most gifted marketing companies in the world and consumer-obsessed companies in the world. And a lot of what we do is help consumers understand what they want. And I think we can use that expertise and that talent to help consumers understand that refills are what they want because they're more affordable, because they're more convenient, help them understand that they're more sustainable. But our perspective is not necessarily that we are waiting for the consumers to tell us that they want refillable formats. I think what's really exciting, though, is that we're finding that they're well received by our consumers. You know, some of the marketing content we've done around our refills garners higher engagement and higher impressions than our non-sustainable content. And so I think what I'm starting to see is hopefully a virtuous cycle.
That's great, thank you. And a couple other ingredients just to sprinkle in are, you know, a group called PR3 is developing universal reuse standards for this burgeoning new industry that can guide us. So these are standards for terminology and labeling and washing and packaging harmonization. And I believe this is very important to guide us as we're entering this new territory. And I think there are people who hold power and funds that we need to convince to unlock these funds. And I believe one of the things that's missing is social proof. What the reuse movement needs more than ever, more than possibly anything, are success stories that can make those not so early adopters see that their peers are doing it, that it's working, and build their confidence that this is a paradigm shift they can make too. Yeah, I want to make sure to mention those. So I'm excited to go to the question leaderboard. Are we able to see that question leaderboard? Let's see. I know you all can see it. Okay, I'll just go over here and see. It's okay. Okay, the first one, how can pioneers, okay. How can pioneers at big brands influence their industries to adopt reuse? That is the most desired question. Reuse pioneers at big, so it's almost like back to you, but let's hear from Caroline first.
I have to hear the question again. I can't hear you.
Oh, how can the pioneers at big brands, so probably some of your customers or potential customers, influence their industries to adopt reuse?
That's a huge question. I'm going to take it from our personal perspective, obviously. For those who aren't aware, reDish goes into corporations, works with them to replace their single-use packaging that they use in their cafeterias, their pantries, their barista bars, et cetera. That's what we actually do. The influence of that is really what's important, though. And we are very proud of the fact that from surveys of those users, we find that the daily use of reuse with reDish in those companies actually causes those employees to think about reuse in a whole different way because it's visible, it's daily, it's kind of in their face, there's no choice, right? So some of the surveys that we've done have shown that very shortly after the introduction of reuse in a corporate cafeteria, in one survey, 1/3 of the folks after 4 months said that they started to use circularity and to think about circularity in other aspects of their life. That's our mission. That's what it's all about to us. So I can't speak to the corporate, how does L'Oreal influence other people in their industry, but I do know that by using reDish, L'Oreal employees are actually thinking about reuse in a whole different way because it's personal, and they're the perfect folks to influence their peers, their families, and people outside of the company so that the movement gains steam from what the corporation has done on a very small scale.
So I want to give Nicole a chance to also respond, and then I have a burning question for Jennie and Elizabeth.
Great. Well, first I have to say, we also use reDish at L'Oreal, and I can attest to the incredible data that comes out of it because we have saved 17,000 pounds of waste since our program with reDish. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
But back to this question, I think the first step is showing up consistently with a strong message in the forums where these conversations are happening between companies, and maybe conversations that are adjacent and pushing the needle where we can. So for example, we are members of US Plastics Pact. We have been longstanding members of the Recycling Partnership. We are founding board members of the Circular Action Alliance, which is helping to administer a number of states' extended producer responsibility systems. And I think in those forums, showing up with a perspective on our commitment to reuse and also a perspective on what it will take to scale it within our industry, whether that's from an infrastructure perspective or from a marketing and communication perspective or from a sort of space on the shelf perspective at our retailers. And I think at L'Oreal, we have a track record of helping to push the industry where we can in ways that maybe we all didn't think we could. For example, the Eco Beauty Score Consortium, which has looked to launch a standard environmental rating system for beauty products. I think there was a time where that really felt impossible, and fast forward years later, and the Eco Beauty Score Consortium has almost 60 members who have committed to roll out that label, and that's all to say, I think, just showing up in the places where these conversations are happening and taking every opportunity to share our perspective and push forward is the way to do it for companies who are looking to lead.
Wonderful. So, a burning question for the sauciest sauce. Now, there are policy levers that can obligate brands to do the right thing. There are financial incentives. Jennie, from your perspective, what are some of the best ways in terms of regulation, financial incentives to move us toward where we need to be headed?
Thanks for the question. So I would say there's one other place that EPA has had a voice in this conversation. There was an opportunity with the Federal Trade Commission. They requested comment on whether to revise the green guides, which provide guidance to marketers about green claims, including recyclability. And so EPA submitted a letter for public comment to the Federal Trade Commission and really set in that letter to set a very high bar for recyclability and kind of decoupling the chasing arrows and to really look at what's actually recycled in those markets. And I thought that was a good opportunity. I signed it as the DAA for pollution prevention to really look at it as an opportunity to say that recycling doesn't work for some things, and to really step back and look at reduction and reuse. And so opening the conversation in a variety of ways, I think, is really, really important.
I love that. Elizabeth, I know you love policy levers. Tell us about what you see as some of the biggest things on the horizon that are going to lead us to the tipping point.
Thanks. I think the policy angle is tricky to get right. And we have a fear, I think, sometimes of wading into a policy initiative that may be imperfect. And I think what we need to realize is all policy levers are by nature imperfect. So again, we have to start somewhere. I really believe that. And the other thing, it's a little bit of a challenge to everyone, and it's always a challenge to reLoop, is to think about the policy opportunity not as a restrictive one, but as something which is enhancing our economic competitiveness, our corporate resiliency. Reuse is an opportunity to define your competitive advantage as an industry, as an individual corporate, as a country. This is the opportunity, right? The environmental benefits, the environmental justice benefits, notwithstanding climate benefits, of course. This is the way we have to think about it. And in that vein, if we can look at things like EPR and deposit return systems as a mechanism to enhance, to bring about, to introduce and enhance the viability of getting to those outcomes, my hope is that we'll embrace that.
Beautiful. So just to close out the session, the takeaways here, I think, is that we're all the secret sauce, that it's going to be the best and tastiest with the finest ingredients from all the reaches and angles, standards and harmonization, data measurement of impact, innovation, funding, corporate commitment, policy levers, and getting people to the table. It's a beautiful thing. Everyone please give a huge round of applause for the panelists. Thank you for helping us cook up that sauce. And I want to say to everyone, this is the wrap-up of the Reusey's event. Thank you so much for sticking around, and have a wonderful rest of your conference.